Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated with the world around you. And today I'm going to be talking about all of the food crises that are going on and occurring worldwide, even as we speak. And I'm also going to be talking about Venezuela and the state of emergency that's been declared there for 60 days. It's getting from bad to worse. And I'm here at Reuters, and this was reported today. And it says Venezuela opposition slams desperate Maduro state of emergency. And it goes on to say that Venezuela's opposition on Saturday slammed the state of emergency decreed by President Nicolas Maduro and vowed to press home efforts to remove the leftist leader this year amid a grim economic crisis, including a food crisis. Maduro on Friday night declared a 60-day state of emergency due to what he called plots from Venezuela and the United States to subvert him. He did not provide specifics. The measure shows Maduro is panicking as a push for a recall referendum against him gains traction with tired, frustrated Venezuelans, opposition leaders said during a protest in Caracas, the capital. We're talking about a desperate president who is putting himself on the margin of legality and constitutionality, said Democratic Unity Coalition leader Jesus Tarabla, adding Maduro was losing support within his own bloc. If this state of emergency is issued without consulting the National Assembly, we would technically be talking about a self-coup. He told hundreds of supporters who waved Venezuelan flags and chanted, "He's going to fall." Now, the article goes on to talk about the state of emergency and its declaration, but I'm here at All News Pipeline, and I'm here to talk more about the food crises and the food shortages that have been going on worldwide, and not just Venezuela, but in other places worldwide as well. And it says, new videos show heartbreaking scenes of chaos and mayhem. Is this madness coming to America? Critical warning to the American middle class, extinction awaits. Because if you're still sitting there in that mindset of, oh, I feel sorry for them, oh, that's just too bad for other people worldwide, it's coming here too, to America and Europe as well. So you might as well get ready for it and see what's about to take place. Now, the article actually says the heartbreaking news stories coming to us from the country of Venezuela tell us that people are now hunting down cats, dogs, and pigeons in the streets and attempting to find a new way to survive. As food runs out, pets become sustenance as all hell breaks out across the failed nation as seen in the first video below. And I'll leave the link so you can watch the video on your own time. But it says, showing us what's now happening not too far from America, we have to ask, how long before all of this chaos comes home? Because remember, order out of chaos. That is what your government is preparing for. That is the motto and the slogan of the New World Order. And so it goes on to talk about all the turmoil that's been going on in Venezuela, as well as different plans that talk about the situation in Venezuela and how they've reached out all the chaos with looters being burned alive, as well as all of the post-apocalyptic worlds that we've been seeing, as well as all the protests that have been going on in Venezuela as well, and how this is getting ready and testing us for the extinction of the so-called middle class, but of just America and Europe in general, and how they're getting ready for it, and also how they placed what Venezuela is under of state of emergency with martial law pretty much declared. Because anytime you hear that word state of emergency, with all of this going on, with all of these police officers in Venezuela, that is what martial law is. It's time to wake up and see what's going on and see the world around you. And what's even worse about this, and what breaks my heart the most about this, is that there is enough food. Your government has enough food for the entire world. There's plenty of food worldwide. The reason that there's a so-called food scarcity is because your government and the elite and the Jewish Zionists who are on the top, they are blocking access from third world countries into getting food and the resources and the necessities that they need, and they go into these countries and poison them with Monsanto and other different things with Rothschild banks in them to keep them enslaved to the system and the New World Order. But it's so heartbreaking because there's enough food everywhere, but they're the ones causing the problem. They, as in the government and the elite, are causing the food shortages and all this stuff, and they're causing and funding these chaoses as we see, and as you're about to see, it's only going to get worse from here. But if you thought it just stopped there, if you thought it was just Venezuela, if you thought it was just there, oh, think again, because it's also in South Sudan. And I'm here at The Guardian, and it says South Sudan, up to 5.3 million people could face summer food crisis. And just like I said, they have enough food for everybody. The UN and the United Nations, they have enough food to supply worldwide. They're not going to because of the new world order out of chaos. But it says UN warns of worsening hunger despite relative stability in political situation after 2-year civil war. And that's something else I want to mention. So couple that food crisis with the civil war that we're seeing in Venezuela and the civil wars that we've been seeing in South Sudan, and now a food crisis here too. Oh my goodness. But it goes on to say more than 5 million people in South Sudan are facing a severe food shortage this summer, the UN has warned. This number is nearly double the 2.8 million people who were classed as being in crisis or emergency food situations from January to March, with about 40,000 thought to be suffering an outright famine is what we're seeing. The worsening hunger comes despite attempts to end more than 2 years of war, which started back in December 2013 when the president Salva Kiir sacked his first vice president Riek Machar, triggering ethnically charged violence. And it talks about all of what they see and about what food insecure from reports back in 2015. And it says as many as 5.3 million people may face severe food insecurity, with particular areas of concern in the non-conflict affected states of northern Bahr el Ghazal and eastern Equatoria. It's not looking good whatsoever. Now, this article from Press TV also talks about the South Sudan food crisis that's going on. And like I said, this was all reported within the same week, this past week. And like I said, folks, it's only getting worse from here. We see the problems that are going on in Venezuela. We also see all of the political and economic problems that are also going on in Brazil, as well as the Olympic Games are right around the corner, not to mention South Sudan and much of the rest of the world too. And you don't think this is coming to America? Oh, I suggest you think again. Oh, but it's not just South Sudan, it's not just Venezuela, because here I am at CBS and it says United Nations, our favorite organization, and I'm being sarcastic, but it says North Korea food crisis worsening. And it goes on to say the UN Food Agency says water scarcity has caused a drop in North Korea's food production for the first time since 2010, threatening to worsen food security in the reclusive nation. The Rome-based Food and Agriculture Organization said on Wednesday that food production last year was estimated at 5.4 million tons, down 9% from 5.9 million tons in 2014. That includes production of cereals, soybeans, and potatoes. As a result, the country will need to import 694,000 tons of food, just 300,000 tons of which is expected to be covered by government imports. FAO said that leaves the widest gap since 2011 through 2012. It said food security is expected to deteriorate from last year, quote, when most households were already estimated to have poor or borderline food consumption levels. What that means is borderline poverty, not enough food. What exactly is going on? What are they getting ready for and conditioning? Could the United Nations have something to do all this? And is it just North Korea, South Sudan, and Venezuela? Oh, quite the contrary. Oh, but it's not just those nations, it's also Syria as well. And notice how they're targeting North Korea and Syria. They as in the government, they as in the elite, they as in the Zionist fake Khazarian Jews. Because what does this show you is what Syrian food crisis deepens as war chokes farming. And this is from Reuters, because we know that North Korea, Iran, and Cuba are the only nations that don't have Rothschild banks in them. But what Syria doesn't want to cooperate but by putting Monsanto into their nation. So this is why they're targeting after them and everything else. And that's why you're seeing all the civil wars. But it goes on to say, Syria's war has destroyed an agricultural infrastructure and fractured the state system that provides farmers with seeds and buys their crops, deepening a humanitarian crisis in a country struggling to produce enough grain to feed its people. The country's shortage of its main staple wheat is worsening. The area of land sown with the cereal used to make bread and with with barley has fallen again this year, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, or the FAO, told Reuters, another alphabet soup. The northeast province of Hasaka, which accounts for almost half the country's wheat production, has seen heavy fighting between the Kurdish YPG militia, backed by the US-led airstrikes and Islamic State militants, when we know who's backing that too. But it goes on to say farming infrastructure, including irrigation canals and grain depots, has been destroyed, according to the FAO. It said the storage facilities of the state seeds body across the country had also been damaged, so it had distributed just a tenth of the 450,000 tons of seeds that farmers needed to cultivate their land this season. So in other words, there aren't enough seeds, and what? It's based on drought too, because who's causing the droughts to begin with? You're going to see in a second there, just in a minute. Because I'm here at CCTV, and it also talks about the food crisis in Zimbabwe that's going on and how they're trying to avert it. And this was reported a couple of days ago, actually. But what's even worse is that you're seeing that a lot of these food crises are due to different droughts that are going on in these regions because there's not enough rain to cultivate the crops in these specific regions, in Zimbabwe as well as Syria and many others. And the question is, why is that the case? But we also see the same problem in Nigeria as well. So not only is it Zimbabwe and Syria and North Korea and Venezuela and other places worldwide, this is a real serious problem that's been going on with food shortages, and it's due to the droughts, when we know darn well that it's HARP and CERN and other government agencies and alphabet soups that strategically place and locate these droughts to be in these areas that normally grow and cultivate food, but can no longer do that because of the stage government and the weather control and modification. You can even look up government documents where the government even admits to cloud seeding and doing other monstrous things to poison us even more for the plans of depopulation and to fulfill the Zionist plan of the New World Order. But it doesn't stop there, because not only have we been seeing food shortages and droughts in Venezuela, South Sudan, North Korea, Syria, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria, but we also see it in Kashmir, India, where there's war-torn and war-stricken areas in Kashmir that the UN and that others are not reporting on. I wonder why that is. And what you should also be thinking about too is that droughts cause food shortages. If there's a drought in a specific area, or if there are major droughts, then there's going to be no food growing there. No food growing there means no food on your table. It's time to wake up and see the bigger agenda and what's really going on. And even here with India, they even say amid curfew in Indian held Kashmir. Sounds like martial law and training for martial law to me, and testing it before they finally bring it to America. The question, though, is that are you awakened to all of this? Are you seeing what's going on in the world around you? Now, mind you, this stuff was reported last month, but it says from the BBC that Africa drought fears grip Malawi and Mozambique. So it's also there as well. So you can see that this is a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide issue. And I wonder what the bigger agenda is, because like I said earlier, there's plenty of food, but what are they hiding? Now, I know this was last month, but this hasn't been getting a lot of attention in mainstream media. I wonder why that is, but back in April 15th, Malawi declared a state of disaster over food shortage, and it said, according to the UN figures, about 2.8 million Malawians, nearly 20% of the population, face food insecurity, making the country one of the worst hit in southern and eastern Africa, not to mention all of the droughts that have been going on in South Africa as well. What are they getting ready for? What is the bigger agenda? And like I said, if you don't think that this is all staging and testing and getting ready for America, then you better think again, because as you can see, this is a worldwide problem. It's time to wake up. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so that you will be ready for all of this to come. This is Truth Unveiled here. Shalom.